Welcome to Victober Volume 2. I'm really excited to be doing Victober. I have currently read 2 already, David Copperfield and The Mayor of Casterbridge. And going from here, I'm going to be reading The Goblet Market and Sonnets of the Portuguese. And then a little bit later, I'm going to be reading Middlemarch. And then I'll also be reading little bits of non-Victober books as well in here. And I'm really excited for spooky season, for classic season, for tea and pumpkins. It's just gonna be really delightful. Hello, it is a beautiful, very fall day, very rainy. I want to take fall photos before all of the trees fall, which it looks like it might be really soon. And yet, what am I supposed to do? It's raining very hard, but I want the fall photos because they're the prettiest photos of all. And I've started a Secret Sisterhood, which is really good at looking at different Victorian and Jane Austen, and goes into the Edwardian and pre-Edwardian, where we no longer have names after things and stuff, and that is Virginia Woolf and her and Catherine Mansfield, and I think it's just going to be a really fascinating book, and I'm super excited to read it. And I'm still reading Whose Body and all of the other things, and yeah, I'm having a delightful Victober. I've been editing videos because I actually filmed stuff, and that has felt really good after like a year in which I've been incredibly stressed about school and about grief and injuries and stuff. To have time when I'm just like making content and talking about books is just really delightful. So yay, I'm happy. This is me dramatically trying to create cool vampire things. My thought is Dracula, which is cool, and then we like have the thing, because necks and things. I'm trying to be gothic. I think it's gonna be cool. That's why I'm not a like person who does any photography at all, because I'm always like, this is so creepy and weird and like so white. Don't mind me trying to readjust the camera. I'm having a lot of fun. My hair is a little crazy and I'm hoping that's adding to the gothic aesthetic. All I want to do is fulfill my goth dreams, but I don't know how to do that, you know? Also, I realized that Aang was in the background for some of them, which is probably like ruining the creepy vibes. I'd even try to be creepy. I was just like, how about I wear a black dress and having the haunting of Hill House. Am I en route to a midnight party? Absolutely, yeah.
Is the love that you had.
There's nothing quite like when you get home at like 2:45 from the Taylor Swift listening thing, only to have 7 more songs. Like, girl, I need to go to sleep, but also, there's 7 more songs. We are coming to the end of Victober and I'm having a lot of fun. I am about to start Middlemarch and I am finishing A Secret Sisterhood, and it is very interesting. It's not clearly always Victorian, but it is primarily Victorian. It begins with the relationship between Jane Austen and Anne Sharp, and then it looks at the friendship of Charlotte Bronte and Mary Taylor, and also looks at a little bit of Elizabeth Gaskell in there as well, and very interesting, and Ellen Nussey, and the relationships in which those are formed. It also doesn't just look at the biographical details that relate directly to their friendship, but also the overall things as well, and I'm finding that really fascinating. And then it moves on to George Eliot and Harriet Beecher Stowe and their relationship, which is very interesting, as they never met but they communicated. And you know, that's kind of the friendship I want to be like. Let's write and, you know, tell about our stories and tell about our things, and then like when one starts to like, you know, share something and hoping for things, and then someone drawing back and not necessarily knowing how to communicate, and those relationships and aspects that would not be recorded if they had met. And like when you're sitting in a room and you're like, do I share this? And you share something and the person doesn't respond properly, you know, those are very different than when you see it in a letter. And their lives are very interesting. And now I've just moved on to Virginia Woolf and Catherine Mansfield, and I've read both of their works as well, and I find them really fascinating. So I also know that Catherine Mansfield is the cousin of Elizabeth von Urnham, and they have very interesting relationships. So it's good to know more about Catherine Mansfield, because I've read her work and enjoyed it, but I don't know a lot, and I know that she dies early. It's really interesting to see the ways in which literary friendships begin and end, and I don't know, I hope that like, you know, now on Instagram and stuff you'll be like, Tahira Mafi and Marie Lu hanging out and like things like that. And I don't know, I just hope that like one day there'll be like books written about the women and the men who are friends today in literary worlds, or like the fact that John Green and Ransom Riggs went to high school together and like, you know, hung out, and all of those things. I find those really fascinating. And I think they went to college together too. He was talking about Dear John Hank, how they were in an improv team together. Like, these were things that, like, you know, how you become a literary person and how those are connected, I think are always really fascinating. So I'm also hopefully going to read the sonnets. This ended up being a busier month and especially a bigger weekend, but I'm hoping on some Sunday night and on Monday morning I'll be able to finish some books, and it might push a little bit into November, but I'm hoping for the best. You know how I said I was going to do Middlemarch? I haven't done that, but I've started Wuthering Heights again. I read over half of it with my roommate last year, and I had like started it years ago before. And it is, for me, some people say Jane Eyre is much harder to read. I find Emily Bronte's prose really, really thick, overdramatic, using too many big words. And I know she's everyone's favorite, but that is just my thought. So I started an audiobook and hopefully I'm going to finish it by the end of the month. I'm hoping that I'm going to like it. I'm like listening to an audio is helping me with some of it, but it's also funny because I'm like venomous phlegm and like, you know, all of the dogs in the recesses. Like these things are still making me laugh, and I don't think Jane Eyre is as dramatic. And I know you don't have to like pit the sister after sister. I'm definitely looking forward to reading Tennant and Anne Bronte's books because I think that she's going to be the one that I go with the most based on the things that I have read by her. Started Browning's poetry yesterday. I've enjoyed the first few. I actually tried to buy it and it's kind of out of stock, and that makes me very, very surprised because like Sonnets of the Portuguese is one of the things that like I know, like that I remember from a small child being familiar with. So it's very weird to me that I can't get her poetry. So hi, this is a Victober update and I'm really, really excited to talk about it. I started Wuthering Heights. I know I'm supposed to be reading Middlemarch and I am still excited to read it. I'm very excited. It's probably going to be November because I ended up having a much busier month than I expected, and I was going to take a break on Victober books and then read other books in the middle, and then I never got back to it. I read A Secret Sisterhood and I really enjoyed it. I liked looking at the characters and looking at their stories. I especially liked that it looked forward and looked at like Toni Morrison and Maya Angelou, about Jean Rhys and Elliot Bliss. It also looked at Alice Munro and Margaret Atwood, who I got to witness. Like, I don't know if it was a Testaments or something in which one of them won something and they were interviewing. I think Alice Munro was being interviewed. So she had like released a book or something. And I was just like looking at them and like they're very clearly friends. And it was like, I think it was a Zoom meeting that had been recorded and was like on the thing, and they were being so adorable, and I was like, these people have to look it up, and I researched them, and they've known each other since 1969. I think Alice Munro is almost a decade older, but like she would have been in her 30s, like Margaret Atwood would have been in her 20s, and it is so delightful and watching them. So I love the ways in which women have been friends for years and how they celebrate that and go together, and just looked at them. And I love that like Elizabeth Gaskell kind of intersected with many of the things that like in one of the earlier ones talk about Henry James coming to, I think, the Brontes, or it must have been Eliot or something like that. Yeah, he came to Anna Eliot's and he was talking about like, you know, him being a new author and stuff, and I really like his work. And then in later it talks about him dying in the time in which Virginia Woolf and Kate Mansfield were doing stuff. So I really enjoyed the stories and like the ways in which they read it and how it connected and stuff. So that was really fascinating. And I really want to read Demon Copperfield and stuff like that as well. I feel like that would be an interesting take on the ways in which things have moved on and stuff like that. Sorry, I keep on hitting my thing. But tonight was supposed to be a Taylor Swift night. My friend had like seen like, you know, it's a club night where they like play Taylor Swift and you party and you sing and it's gonna be great. And I forgot my ID here. So I get there and I'm like, crap, I don't have my ID. But it was like downtown where it was one of those things where like you couldn't park anywhere near it, and it ended up being like a whole hassle. Anyways, I get there and I'm in line and I'm like, I don't have ID because I've never really got ID'd. For my American friends, the age of drinking in Ontario is 19. And I was like, he should be fine with it. And I get to the thing and my friend shows her ID. She's 24. She's a year younger than me. And I'm like, I'm really, really sorry I forgot that. And he's like, I can't let you in. And we're like, we have tickets. Do I look like I'm under the age of 19? And he's like, and I'm like, really? Really? Anyways, we end up going to a pub in town because we're like, you know, we could drive all the way back, get my ID and stuff like that. Anyways, they give us our drinks without IDing us. And then she's like, you're really dressed up, because I was in this cute dress. I had everything, and I like cut my hair and it's a little too short. So I'm disappointed in that, but that is the perils of cutting my own hair. I'm hoping to watch David Copperfield tonight. It feels weird to say tonight. It feels like night. But Sunday night, I'm hoping to watch David Copperfield, the 2019 adaptation, and hopefully read some sonnets and finish Wuthering Heights. We definitely have a lot of light here. So I'm rereading Wuthering Heights, and I'm at the part where our narrator is in Catherine's room, and I'm getting so much more from it now that I actually know what the heck is going on, and I'm very, very interested. So maybe I will like this book after all. Maybe, just maybe. I feel like reading it physically is just a little bit too hard for my dyslexic soul, so maybe reading it this way and having a little bit more foreknowledge, because I didn't want to like spoil myself on anything, I think will actually add to maybe the later half and stuff. So let's hope on the best. So my conclusion on finishing Wuthering Heights is I don't know why people like this. It is now officially done, Victober, but I really, really enjoyed it. I read The Mayor of Casterbridge, which I've talked about a lot, and I quite enjoyed it. The more I think back on it, the more I like it. It's a story that has a lot of twists and turns and is sometimes overdramatic, but is also really interesting. And the characters, especially the female characters, are interesting. Sometimes they are used for plot rather than characters, and that frustrates me, but at times they're just really, really delightful as well. And I really, really adore them. David Copperfield, I had more mixed thoughts about it. Again, the female characters sometimes fail to be outside of characters, but the plot is really interesting. At times, I wish it was shorter and it was compacted more, but it is a book that I think fondly back, even though it's a book that I don't think I would ever revisit maybe in its entirety. Other book that I kind of looked at, which was kind of Victorian, was Secret Sisterhood, which looked at 4 groups of friendships from the early 19th century with Jane Austen all the way into the early 20th century with Virginia Woolf and Kate Mansfield. These are friendships that highlight female friendships and how they were important and how they sometimes get downplayed or made as rivalry rather than the friendships that they were. And they're very, very intriguing throughout. And then I also finished Wuthering Heights, which I also have more fonder thoughts on now that I finished. Some books, when you finish, you sour on, and some books you finish, you do not sour on. And it's a book that I don't think I enjoy. I enjoy analyzing it, and I did finish it and immediately go like, why do people love this so much? I don't really understand. But I listened to some reviews from Kate from Books and Things and her husband who reviewed it, and I found their thoughts very interesting. I talked to my friend Cara from the Wild Book Garden, and I found that her thoughts on it were really interesting. She is also a part of Past Classics along with Julia and Taylor, and I listened to their conversation and their archived live stream about it, and that also made me have a greater appreciation for it. I don't think it's ever going to be a favorite, and even though like I don't think it will even rise to the things of Jane Eyre, which I find problematic but I also enjoyed and I also found really boring at times, I don't think that this book will ever be a book that I will have close to my heart, but it is a book that I would have interest in analyzing more, having more conversations about, and maybe even rereading at some point in the future. And then for other books that I picked up and did not finish, I have started the Sonnets of the Portuguese. They are very, very interesting. I'm enjoying the things. I found some of the lines, especially how like the heap of grief hidden in me, like that line really struck to my whole. I really, really enjoyed that, as well as just seeing her talk about her heart and her soul, and I really appreciate those elements. And then I've also read parts of Aesthetics and the Decadence of the 1890s. I read a lot of the introduction. The introduction is very long and goes through a lot of it, and I very angrily underlined a lot of things because it's the aesthetics and the decadence are really into the idea that art is only valuable if it's from art's sake. If it becomes political, if it becomes useful in any way, it loses its meaning, which probably could be no further than opposite from what I think. I think that art should be political, that it should be used. Like, not that art's purpose should be sacrificed for political gain, but that you can't make art that isn't political in some way, so to be meaningful in that is intentional. You can't just do that. And also then he has a whole thing about how like so many of these believe that like you need to shock people, and the greatest sin would be to have an audience that you could not shock, because if you recruit everyone to your side, then you don't shock people. And that really rubs me out of the way as someone who cares very much for, having books and knowledge and things like that, educating people and creating a more just and more inclusive world. The idea that we would hope that like one day, talking about things like this would not create shock. Like I hope to live in a world where justice and equality and fair treatment and all of those things are things that do not shock people, that don't outrage people, that don't like create mobs. And again, these people aren't writing in the era of the internet, an era of such economy, but like it feels just so petulant and little to be like, all I want to do is shock people. And yeah, it really turned me off. I do still want to read it because I think it's important to read books and to read things that have opposite opinions of you. But to me, it kind of informs some of my thoughts on Oscar Wilde, and especially the Picture of Dorian Gray, which is a book I don't like very much. Again, this isn't all Oscar Wilde, but like this is Oscar Wilde and the people who influenced him, and he is quoted in here as well. And part of it is like the idea that so much of that is like everything is trying to be grand, everything is supposed to be snappy, and I really never find that it gets into a lot of the weeds of the conversations, the characterization, and we lose so much of that. And I do enjoy some of those elements in his plays because I find that his plays have more room to be more bombastic without being completely empty when I found The Picture of Dorian Gray empty in some ways. And I know some people's it's their favorite books, and I'm not trying to take that away from them. I just found it exhausting in how poetic and dramatic it was supposed to be with no quiet moments or time to reflect. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Victober. I had a really, really delightful time, and I'm really happy to celebrate it next year and to celebrate Victorian literature until then. So I hope you had a great time. Let me know what is your favorite Victorian book, or the book that you wish you could love but don't quite love, or that everyone loves and you're like, no. And I will see you next time.